Hi, my name's Clark and I teach the online IST 659 section. I'm looking forward to getting to know all of you this semester. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. I've been a database designer and programmer for more than 10 years. I design database-centered applications using Microsoft SQL Server and Visual Studio. I started off my career working for an insurance company, and now I work for an asset management firm. In my job, I do tasks like designing databases, normalizing data, coding functions and store procedures, and integration with vendor systems. I also do some volunteer teaching at the Women's Opportunity Center in Syracuse. For fun, I like to go running, I like to play tennis, to play the piano, and spend time with my 6-year-old son.
So now I'd like to go over the syllabus. So of course this is ISD 659, the Intro Database class. This is my contact information. Usually most students will contact me by email, but if there's something more complex you wanted to discuss or something more urgent, you can call my cell phone, just not too late at night, please. The first page of the syllabus just explains what you'll learn in this class. You can read that on your own time. I don't really need to explain that too much. This is the recommended textbook. You can get through the class without the textbook, because the readings that I post and the presentations do cover most of the material in the textbook. But it is helpful to have because it condenses the material into a helpful format and provides some good diagrams and explanations. If the 11th edition is too expensive, you can get an earlier edition, but the page numbers might not match up exactly on the old editions. This is an article you'll read in the beginning of the semester, which explains the concepts behind relational database systems. It was written way back in 1970, and that's sort of when relational database systems first started being conceptualized and later being used. This is just a SQL syntax guide, which you can buy if you want, or just use the internet to look up SQL syntax questions. So the next part of the syllabus I think is very important. This is where I tell you what your expectations should be of me, your instructor, and what my expectations are of you, the student. So I will be posting weekly course modules each Monday. I'll respond to your emails and phone calls within 48 hours, though often faster, of course, but that's the limit I'm giving myself. Usually I'll respond the same day or the next day. And I'll grade your assignments within 2 weeks of them being submitted. So what do I expect of you, the student? I expect that you'll log into Blackboard at least every other day in order to stay updated on class information. For example, changes in due dates, last-minute hints on labs. Those kind of things are really important to read so that you have all the information you need to succeed in the class. If you will be away from Blackboard for an extended period, for example, for a vacation or business trip when you won't be doing anything on the Blackboard system, you could let me know in advance just so I can let you know if there's any information you'll have to have ahead of time. I expect that students will post every week to the discussion section, and I'll explain more about that later. I expect that students will submit their work on time. Now, for the technical assignments, it's important that you don't start just the same day the assignments due, because that's not going to give you time to troubleshoot technical problems, contact me for advice, get an answer from me, go ahead and finish your assignment on time. So it's really good to start at least a few days before the assignments due. And obviously for the larger papers, hopefully more than a few days. And it's important that academic integrity is maintained. The punishments for plagiarism in grad school are pretty harsh, so it's important that you not plagiarize. So this is the grade chart for the class. You'll notice that you need a 95% for an A, as opposed to maybe some classes where you need a 93%. That's the way the grades are set up for all the IST 659 sections, so I'm just being consistent with what the professor of record has established. Class participation. So now I'm going to talk about how do you get 1,000 points in the class? What are all the different things you have to do that add up to 1,000 points? Well, class participation, that involves posting on the class discussion boards. So what happens is the following. I'm going to post 2 or 3 discussion board questions each Monday. You need to make your first response to one of the topics by Thursday at 11:59. Then you need to respond to at least one other student's post by Sunday at 11:59. And 5 to 10 sentences is a good ballpark. I've seen some students post more in their posts, which is always good, but you don't have to write a whole paper each time. Just a paragraph or 2 is good. And it's always good to mention work experiences you've had when possible in your posts, because usually students find that interesting when they can learn about sort of what other students have learned from their jobs. So that was 70 points, the participation. Now the biggest area where you earn points is the assignments section. So you have 2 best practice papers. Best practice papers are papers where you pick some kind of topic in the database world, like normalization or partitioning or database security, and what you have to do is research different experts' opinions and combine those opinions into your own ideas and sort of develop your own set of best practices. These are research papers where you'll be citing your sources using APA style, and you'll have a works cited section, or a references section I should say. And this is the area where you have to be very, very careful to cite everything, because if you copy and paste other people's writing without citing it, that's considered plagiarism and could lead to a failing grade or even failing the course. So the final project, that's worth 360 points, a little more than a third of your total grade. There will be 3 deliverables throughout the semester. The first one is a paper that's a couple pages long, where you just make up a business problem and a solution and write about it. The second part of the paper, you're going to create a list of business rules and an entity relationship diagram, which will be used to create a database later to solve this business problem. And finally, this is the big one, the final deliverable. It's a very large paper, and it consists of a number of sections in which you'll answer questions and other sections in which you'll post in screenshots from a database that you'll create. So you'll create a database that will store data, allow data input and data output through reports. So this typically is 40 to 60 pages long. So the last couple weeks of the semester, people will be working a lot on this. So definitely plan for the last 2 weeks of the semester to be very busy. So labs, these will be due throughout the semester. There's 10 labs and there's 14 weeks, so you'll have, usually most weeks you'll have a lab to do. In the labs you'll have to do coding and designing of tables. This is where the real technical stuff goes on. You'll be using SQL Server, Visio, and Access. So exercises. These are actually multiple choice quizzes. There's 2 of them. One is maybe a third into the semester, the other is maybe 2/3 in, and this just tests to make sure that you're doing the readings, make sure you're understanding the topics that you're learning. They can be tricky, so it's definitely good to study for those. So when you submit your assignments, since this is an online class, you'll be submitting everything through Blackboard, of course. And you can submit with by using either Word documents or PDF format. And late assignments, you'll lose 20% for each week they're late. Every semester there's a few students who do very well learning the concepts and doing the work, but submit a number of assignments late and lose a lot of points. So it's important to look at the course schedule, which we'll look at in a few minutes, and plan out your time so that you don't needlessly lose points on this. So technology access. What you'll need for this class is some kind of word processor, of course, like Microsoft Word, so you can type up answers to the labs and write the papers. It's assumed that you'd have that already. You'll also need Microsoft Access and Visio, which are part of Microsoft Office. Now, the good news is that this software is available for you for free, and I'll talk about that a little more. You're also going to need SQL Server Management Studio 2014, which is also available for free. And for Access and Visio, you're going to see from the videos and the lab manual that the screenshots are going to be showing 2013 versions of these programs. But you might have an earlier version. It's okay to use an earlier version, but just remember it might be a little harder to follow along with the videos and the lab manual if you've got a different version. So anyway, as far as getting the software goes, these three pieces of software, you have two options for getting that software. The first is that there's this website called Microsoft DreamSpark, and you can download this software along with a lot more software for free. Any SU student with that SU ID and password can do that. And I'm going to make another video that will explain that. The other option, if you want to use the software and you don't want to deal with downloading it, installing it, getting it working right, is we have something called Remote Lab. So Remote Lab basically involves you VPNing into the Syracuse University network and then creating a remote desktop session that connects to one of the lab PCs in the iSchool. And all the software will be set up for you on those lab PCs. Microsoft Office, Visual Studio, SQL Server Management Studio, any software you'll need will be there. Now, this is pretty easy to connect to, but it can get slow at times, so some people use option 1, some use option 2. And again, you'll see a video posted during week 1 which will explain how to get this software. So these are just some university policies. You'll probably see this information on your syllabi for different classes. I did want to highlight academic integrity because there have been some instances in the past of students making mistakes in this area. Anytime you use work that's written by someone else, you need to cite it with APA citation style. And you can go to this link for some information on that. So you need to provide the in-text reference and then the references page where you give the information for each reference, like the author, title, publication, page, etc. This again is just, all of these statements are just standard statements for all classes. One more thing that I want to mention is Turnitin. So Turnitin is what you're going to use to submit your research papers, both your best practice papers and your final submission for your class project, the one that's worth 360 points. So Turnitin is basically a database that contains all the papers students have submitted who use this software for any class in SU or other universities. Turnitin also has a database of internet articles, journal articles, books. So if you try to copy and paste something from an internet source or from textbook, and then you put it in your paper and submit it through Turnitin, it's going to flag, a paragraph that say you cut and pasted from somewhere and say, here we have a source, it better have a citation because it's similar to this article written by so-and-so. So Turnitin is very important in detecting plagiarism. And the useful thing is when you submit your papers, you'll see a Turnitin report yourself, and if you see problems with your similarity score and you see issues where you've got sections of your paper that are similar to other authors' work and there's no reference, you will be able to fix that and resubmit before you actually submit it so that I can see it. So Turnitin will definitely help you out with avoiding plagiarism if you make sure to read the report and fix any issues. So this is an outline of our course. If you're reading this, viewing this video, then it's probably week 0, which is sort of just the introduction week. And then we go from there. You'll notice that for each week I've listed the Monday that the week begins, the learning goals, and then your assignment list. And when there's something due, I have it in bold, the date and time it's due. So just look through this. There are going to be some weeks when there's 3 or 4 things due, so it's important to plan that out. This class has a lot of assignments, so you definitely want to set aside time during the weeks where there's a lot of things due. So I hope this video was helpful in terms of introducing myself and getting you familiar with the class and the syllabus. And don't hesitate to give me an email or call if you have any questions. Thank you.